respect for your parents, or managing your finances so that you can retire early, financial independence and retire early, that policy, that idea. If you give a big speech on that, you're not making people feel much, so they'll forget about what you said. But if you include humor in it, and if the topic can still be something serious, like say retirement planning, or resilience in the face of setbacks, even if those things are happening, if your speech is a little bit humorous, a little bit funny, then the audience will sort of remember the fact that though the topic was a serious one, you used humor to make it more clear to them what you were trying to say. So which is what I keep telling people, that don't discard and dismiss humor as an important arrow in your communication style, in the way you talk to people and what you say to them when you're on stage or when you're teaching and training. Use humor as a little bit of a weapon to create empathy, because a couple of things happen when you're funny. A, you can see the audience laughing, you can see the audience smiling, you see the audience's ears perk up when you say something that they understand and relate to. So it's a visible sign that the audience is engaging with you. The second thing is that when you and somebody laugh at the same thing, you're on the same wavelength. So from that point onwards, that defensive barrier, that this being on stage or being in front of the room, and the other and the audience being sitting away from you, that there's a barrier, there's a gap between the person on stage and the person in the audience. That barrier goes away when you start making jokes, and people enjoy it, they laugh about it and things like that. So that's another great reason why humor should be part of your skill set, because A, it's visible, because you can see how the other person is reacting, and B, it creates empathy. And finally, every joke, we'll discuss a little bit more about what constitutes a joke and things like that. Every joke actually is a shared reality. Like when I tell you a joke about a knock knock joke, then we're entering into a world together where there's somebody at the door saying knock knock, and then we both laugh at the punchline. We're entering into a shared reality, and that shared reality becomes our thing. So we're creating a connection with the audience through humor. And I think this makes humor a fantastic key to unlock the audience, because if you deploy humor in a tactical and a strategic way, it becomes a way for the audience for you to open up the audience and make them understand what you're saying, how you're saying it, and why you're saying it. So that empathy is what humor becomes, that bridge towards empathy between you and the audience. So that's basically the summary. So that's the question number one, is why do you need humor? The question number two is, can somebody be taught how to be funny? And Rajman, let me ask you this, if you're able to answer. Uh, do you think you're funny? And if you think you're funny, do you use humor in the work you do?
Well, thank you for asking me, Sai. This is a very good topic where I'm going to use your ideas in a little bit in my next class. Because a lot of people don't know what is the difference between fun and funny, and humor versus fun. So in laughter yoga, we use laughing without any reason.
Hmm.
I mean, laughing is exercise program, you
Right.
know. And we have a lot of theories called motion creates emotion, and fun versus funny, and all that kind of thing. Because it's such a fascinating. Even humor is humor. The topic humor so, is so fascinating that a lot of people misconcept it, and a lot of people who don't understand the science behind humor, and not only humor and laughter yoga,
Mhm.
uh, take life very seriously.
Right. That's true. And I hopefully this 1 45-minute session that we're going to have together, it'll deconstruct some of that and make humor a little bit more available to us as teachers and leading people who speak for a living. Now, the second question is, I mean, if I never thought that I'd be a stand-up comedian in my life. I mean, I used to enjoy stand-up comedy. I used to be funny in class. I think I used to be funny in class. I should check with my WhatsApp group at my high school WhatsApp group if they thought I was funny or not. But I used to think I was funny in class, but it never was something that I wanted to get into and become like a performer on stage doing stand-up comedy. But that's where I find myself today. And like I said, the first few times I was on stage, it was a complete disaster. It wasn't really good. And I had to go back and learn the basics. And which is that's the message I want to start with, that humor is not something that you have to be born with. Or the other misconception is that if you have a damaged life, if you had horrible parents and you had a really lots of trouble in life, then you can use that to become find funny things to say about life or make observational comedy about life. That's also not true, because if that was the case, everybody with a bad with bad experiences in life would be funny. It's not true. Just humor is just like any other skill that you can develop, like just like swimming and cycling, and say being able to do crosswords or being able to do the Rubik's cube. It's a skill that you can hone. It's a skill that you can work on. And let me give you a couple of tools that get you started on humor, as using humor in your toolkit. The first tool that I want to start with is a journal. It's a simple thing. If you have a notes app on your phone, anytime you think of something interesting to say, it doesn't have to be funny. Please don't. Okay, I should probably also talk about this, that being funny and being humorous and being interesting are related but not the same. Don't put so much pressure on yourself that you have to make the audience laugh out loud when you're talking to them. As long as you can say something interesting in a way that it expands their horizons and makes them think a little differently about what you're talking to them about, that is a way of using humor. I mean, obviously you can't depress them, but if you can make them say something interesting which helps them think about the same problem in a different way, that is the type of humor that I'm talking about. Don't put the pressure on yourself that you have to be a stand-up comedian and you have to make them like laugh out loud and clap and holler and cheer. That's not our job. We're not stand-up comedians. Not all of us are stand-up comedians, and we're not going to go out and make that kind of an impact. But as long as you help, as long as you tell the audience the same thing in a different way and make them think a little differently, that's, to me, that's good enough when it comes to humor. So once we've agreed that humor doesn't have to be laugh out loud funny, it just has to be an interesting interpretation on life. Let's go back to journaling. Now, journaling is what I do. I spend a lot of time. Off late, I've been a little bit slack, but when I was working towards my first comedy video, I used to write down, I used to go to the newspaper, I used to pick up the newspaper, look at the headline, and make a joke about it, and make something, a small little story around the headlines of the newspaper. And it was my job to do 10 every day. Like the first thing when I used to wake up in the morning, get my coffee, get my kid ready for school and send him off, I would do about 10 jokes back to back to back. So that journal became my like a cheat sheet, that whenever I had to do any performance, I'd go back to my journal, look at my jokes, and start from there to see what I could use for my next performance. So start journaling. And again, if you think something interesting, for example, if you are talking about, I don't know, a lunch that you had with your friend, and something you have a certain observation that you made, which you would like to uh, maybe refer back later. For example, the waiter was extremely handsome, or the waiter was extremely you saw a waiter who had some exceptional qualities, like maybe he was really tall or something. You just make a note of that, and make sure you also make a note of the feelings you had when that incident was happening. If you noticed a really handsome waiter, or you noticed a waiter who was extremely rude, or you were extremely tall, what did you feel at that moment? Did you feel intimidated when he was rude to you? Did you feel upset that he was rude to you? And write down a little bit like that when this guy was, here's this waiter who came and served us, but he was really rude and I was really upset about it. And then maybe at the same moment, when you're making this journal entry, take a second to connect it to something else that you can maybe talk about. For example, if the waiter was a, a, a male waiter who was extremely rude, and you like to do comedy about the battle of the sexes, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, that those kind of content you like to make, you could maybe talk about that you know he's clearly you could make that a reference in your in your journal, that this could be part of your men are from Mars, women are from Venus, because this guy was a male waiter that I noticed being extremely rude and difficult to handle. So that's the step number one. Start journaling, because if you don't journal, if you don't put things on a sheet of paper and have it handy for the next 6 to 8 months, you'll never remember the things that happened to you. And then you keep thinking, where do people come up with jokes? Because even the most creative person needs that journal entry, that list that they can refer back later and then say that I would like to make jokes based on things that happened in their life months ago. That's one. Now, the first question we asked was, can humor be taught? Can people be funny? What is humor? I want to expand a little bit on what is humor, because many people don't have a good definition of what is humor. Good humor is the juxtaposition of two different ideas and a way to connect the two of them. That's something that we will be covering. Like I said, there's a mastermind coming up, and I would love to have more people on that mastermind so that we can maybe dig deep into this and break it down. Let's take an example of a juxtaposition. Like when you are putting two ideas next to each other and connecting making a bridge between them. Let me give you an example about Operation Sindoor, which was the recent India-Pakistan skirmish / mini war that happened. Operation Sindoor was underway, and it is around that same time that an Indian cricketer called Virat Kohli, he retired at the same time. So one of the jokes I read online was that Operation Sindoor, when Operation Sindoor was the ceasefire was announced and Operation Sindoor stopped, Virat Kohli retired basically the same day or the next day. So Operation Sindoor started, then the ceasefire happened, and then Virat Kohli retired. And one of the things that Virat Kohli is very good at is his record against Pakistan on the cricket field is impeccable. He's got a very good record. So one of the jokes I saw people making was that Virat Kohli, so Pakistan not only got the Operation Sindoor to stop hammering them, they also got Virat Kohli to retire at the same time. So basically, in a way, Pakistan had a little bit of they got lucky with these incidents. So the juxtaposition here is that you are connecting Operation Sindoor, which was a reaction to a terror attack and is a geopolitical thing, with Virat Kohli, who's a cricket sporting icon. And the only common thing between them is that in both cases, the enemy, quote unquote enemy, in both cases was Pakistan. Virat Kohli has a good record against Pakistan. Operation Sindoor was directed against Pakistan. So that was the juxtaposition. So you should, if you want to find funny things to say, try to find related ideas. But one warning is, don't go too far. If you make your jokes really, really hard to follow, for example, one of the jokes could be about demonetization, followed by something about the India-US exchange rate. That becomes a bridge too far. Nobody's going to be able to follow you on that journey when you make a joke connecting such different topics. So when you make a joke, make sure that you are connecting topics which are roughly one arm distance from each other. You can make that intellectual jump from Operation Sindoor to Pakistan, Pakistan to Virat Kohli, and Virat Kohli back to Pakistan. And so it becomes like a relatively simple for people to understand when you make a joke about that Pakistan got lucky with two things which were difficult, make life difficult for them, ending at the same time, Virat Kohli and Operation Sindoor. That's a one arm distance rule that you should keep in mind, that your audience should be able to follow you on a journey. When you tell them a joke, they should be able to follow the journey with you, so that they're not completely like trying to scratching their heads and trying to figure out what the hell you're saying, because they don't understand any of it. So that's one piece of advice I'd have. And the only way to find out if your audience is going to understand what you're saying is to test it. So the other thing I want to do, apart from having a journal, is to have at least one or two people whose response and feedback you respect and appreciate, and they are somewhat representative of the kind of audience that you hope to attract. In my case, I bounce most of my jokes off my wife, and she tends to have very good insights on what is funny and what's not funny. Of course, she's not obviously 100% right. I'm not 100% right either. So we sort of work it out, what works, what doesn't work. Hi, Raki. I'm so happy you're here. We are talking about humor, and I don't know how much about humor you care about, but we're discussing. I see a little bit of Raki's head. So I was just saying that humor has a couple of components. One is that you need to place unrelated ideas next to each other before things start to become funny. then the other thing you need to do is make sure that the things that you're putting next to each other are not very far from each other. It should not take a lot of effort for the audience to uh, make that connection between the two ideas that you're placing next to each other. And finally, have a journal and have someone you can bounce ideas off, usually a spouse or a parent or a sibling. They're great sounding boards. And you don't have to take their advice 100% of the time. Many times my sounding board is my wife, and many times I don't take her advice. I go ahead, and if I find something funny, I know if something has some legs, I just go with it. Like, let me give you an example. This is in my comedy set that I released recently. You can tell that I'm bald. So I was telling the story about telling my story, this potential joke to my wife about how, and my wife is a data scientist, so she loves working with data and graphs and all that. So soon after our marriage, uh, I was telling her I was feeling insecure about the fact that I was going bald, and she said, "No, no, you look fine to me, and you look like a normal distribution to me." And I said, "What do you mean normal distribution to me?" Normal distribution as in you have no hair on your head, you have no hair on your feet, and you have hair on your tummy, which is I have chest hair. I mean, all guys do, or at least all Indian guys do have chest hair. So it looks like your hair is zero on your head and a zero at your feet, but in the middle it peaks like a normal distribution. So which is when I told her the joke, she didn't find it really that interesting. But when I tried this with audiences, they loved it. I mean, maybe it's because Bangalore has a lot of techies, and I do a lot of my joke testing in Bangalore at venues in Bangalore. So maybe because of that, maybe because there are lots of techies and they understand normal distribution and all that. Maybe that's why they like the joke. But the audience response was really positive, and I kept it in my set. So if you want to be funny, and if you uh, see humor as being part of your daily life, then first thing, get a journal. Second thing, have someone to test ideas on a semi-frequent basis. You can't go bore them every day, but if you go every once in a while and ask them to help you understand if a joke is funny or not funny, I think that's a good investment in that relationship. So that's the basics of humor. You have to create juxtapositions and make sure that the two ideas you're connecting are not too far from each other. Then yeah, let's leave it at that's the basics of humor. Okay. Now, next comes the question of where do you find funny things to say? Because a lot of us don't believe that our lives have anything funny going on. But again, I take strong exception to that. I think all of us at all points in time have something or the other interesting happening in our lives. We just don't see it as interesting because it's happening to us. To us, it's like just daily life. But to others, if you tell the story the correct way, or if you identify the nugget of insight in them, it'll start to become interesting to other people. And the important thing about being on stage and talking on stage is being interesting. Like, the first thing you should need to do is to be interesting. If you're going to be boring, it's going to be not going to work. And the best way to be interesting is to tell stories which the audience can empathize and understand. Let me give you an example. And I'm just going to give the example because anyway, it's like I've done this exact joke in public before, so I hope it doesn't give offense to anyone. But it's not intended to give offense. It's supposed to be insight. So I have a 4-year-old, 5-year-old at home, and he has this habit of every once in a while saying no. As in, you ask him to do something, he'll say no straight to your face and not do it. So one day I had to take a bus to take a bus one stop, basically the one stop before my house. We got down from a different bus and then took another bus from that one stop to come to my house, basically one stop. So we boarded the bus, and that bus was sort of busy, but there was one seat open right next to the door. And on that seat, it was a two-person seat, and one person was a Muslim man sitting there, and he moved a little to let us sit. And I told my son, "Why don't you go sit next to that man?" And he immediately, my son went into that, "I'm not going to do anything you say" mode, and he said no. And then I started feeling guilty, like I didn't want that Muslim man to think that my son was racist, or he didn't like to sit next to Muslim people, which I don't think he thought that man was thinking that, but I felt guilty about it. I didn't want him to think that. So I was like, oh, and I didn't want him to think that I was bringing up my son the wrong way, because obviously he's only a 4-year-old. The man will not think that my son is racist. He'll think that I have brought him up that way, because of which he's being racist. So I felt really guilty. And though I had to go only one stop, I sat next to that Muslim man, and I was making sure that at least by doing that action, I wanted him to understand that it was not about the fact that he was Muslim or there was any, like any racism there. So I sat down next to this man. And then as I was approaching my stop, I was about to get up when the guy sneezed really loudly, and he sneezed in a way which was like, one of those really loud sneezes, and then he wiped his hands on his, he did that after sneezing, oh, and then he sneezed and he wiped his hands. So now I was like feeling guilty about something else. Not only was I feeling guilty that my son was refusing to sit next to him, I was also feeling guilty that I didn't want to stand up at that moment and make him think that I was judging him for the way he sneezed and the way he rubbed his hands. So I sat down for another stop, and I had bought tickets only for one stop. And I was now traveling an extra stop after that because I wanted to get down at the next stop, just so that this man would not think these things about me. So I went on to the next stop. And it turns out that there sometimes ticket checkers come and check your tickets to make sure that you're not they're just traveling without a ticket on buses. And that time it turned out that there were ticket checkers at the next stop, at the second stop. And I was like, oh man, now what do I do? Because I bought tickets only for the previous stop. And in Bangalore, the rule is if you don't buy tickets to the correct stop, you have to pay 50 times the cost of the ticket or something like that, some crazy number like that. So I was feeling really scared that they'd look at my ticket and charge me a few hundred rupees for the one extra stop that I traveled. But it turned out that the bus ticket that was issued to me from the first stop was actually until the third stop, not to the second stop. That's one of the things that the Bangalore buses do, that they give you tickets until the following stop. So I learned that along the way. And my lesson was that I've learned from my son that not only I'm the kind of person who feels guilty about the way he behaves, I also feel guilty about, or I also learned that Bangalore buses issue tickets to a further stop. So my point being that your story that you tell and the jokes that you convey, they have to be interesting in some way. There has to be an insight. And most of the insights that you can share come from your own life, from the experiences that you are dealing with and or what you're undergoing at any given moment in time. The important thing is for you to realize that this is the experience this is the lesson that you're learning from an experience, and use that during your talks. If you are for example, like if I was talking about leadership, then maybe I could make this a lesson in inclusiveness. I don't know why my phone is screaming so much. I'm going to turn off the audio if I can. Give me 1 second. Let's go into focus mode so it doesn't disturb. Right. So one thing you can do is those kind of things that your stories that you tell are not just stories in the banal sense, but they're lessons more than, and again, these stories cannot always be boring lessons like, oh, you should respect you should go fight your battles and win every battle with perseverance and hard work. I mean, those stories anybody can tell. You need to have stories which are a lot more uh, nuanced. My story about feeling embarrassed about being thought of as a racist person was not a story that you'd expect to hear. When I started telling the story about my child, you'd not expect to hear that I was the real story. The real lesson was that I feel guilty about feeling of being thought of as racist. So that interesting uh, angle to a story is what makes your content stand out. So if you are a communicator, if you teach and all that, if you train, then you should make sure that your stories are not just about you can do this, you go do hard work and win, but also a little bit more about what really went through in your heart and what you were feeling and what you realized and all those things. So that's one source of stories, which is your own lived experiences. Another really cool way to come up with interesting angles to an incident is to uh, is to treat inanimate objects as humans. Okay. Now, say this is an example that I talk about a lot. Say you are we've all been taught that you should not judge a book by its cover. You're not supposed to take things at face value. You should respect the person behind and all those things. Now, if I were to twist this around and say, if a human being is not supposed to judge a book by its cover, what does it mean? Does it mean that a book can judge us? Like, I have many books in my bookshelf which are completely useless books, which I'd been embarrassed to tell anybody that I have those books. Like, I have a book called Cooking for Dummies. Now, a book called Cooking for Dummies, do you think the other books on that bookshelf look at that book called Cooking for Dummies and judge me for having a book like that? So those kind of questions, when you have, you ask human-centric questions to inanimate objects, that becomes an interesting set of insights that you can get from there that the audience usually sort of finds funny and interesting and a little bit thought-provoking. For example, if you have a car and I'm sure all of us who drive have a very, very human vehicle relationship is not just between you and an inanimate object. You talk to your car, you know more or less how it's interacting, how it's talking to you, what it's saying to you when you're driving. You sort of know that. I'm sure, I don't know if Shabana and Rakhi, do you guys drive?
Yeah, and in fact, when I was selling it, I can almost feel emotion because it was more than 15 years. Like in Delhi, you cannot, now you can, but during COVID time, you could not. Like, so it was almost a very emotional attachment. So while parting away, you are like, oh no.
There you go. So
So,
when you start having these, you start assigning human attributes to inanimate objects. Those can be a very rich source of stories for your content. So when you're training and you talk about, the bond that you formed with your car, that can may be an interesting story right there. So I would say that your lived experiences are, of course, a source of stories, but the flipping it and making inanimate objects the target of your questions and your insights and your human emotions becomes another really cool way and a quick way to come up with fun stories for your pieces and content and stuff like that. So that's the second laughter trigger. One laughter trigger that I'm really proud of is something that I'll tell you the story and then you tell me if the trigger worked or not. Okay. So I lived for a long time in the US. I lived in the US for about 15 years before I relocated to India in 2017. And the culture shock initially, when I first moved to the States in 2003, was that it was not big buildings, it was not the fancy cars and all the rich people there. It was that Americans have a very different bathroom culture than Indians. Indians don't, when you go to the bathroom, you shut up, do your business, and come out. You don't really spend time chit-chatting and all that. But Americans, what I discovered were that they're extremely chatty in the bathroom. So when I first started working in the US, I was using the bathroom, and my boss walked into the bathroom. And in America, the toilet doors don't go from floor to ceiling. They're about a few feet above the floor. They stop a few feet above the floor. And he must have seen my shoes from under the stall door because he started asking me questions about a project that I was working on. And this was like a couple of years after I'd moved to the States. I'd done my master's there and then I started working. And this is like a few months after I started working. And I was not comfortable responding to my my boss when I was sitting on the toilet. So I just sat there not saying anything. And he noticed that I was not responding to him. So he asked the question a few more times. And then finally, when I still didn't respond to him, he came to the door and he asked me the question from across the stall door. I was inside, he was outside, he's asking me questions. I still didn't answer because my mom had said, you don't open your mouth in bathrooms, you just shut up and do your business and go. So I didn't answer. And this time, when I was not answering at all, what he did was he looked a little to the right, and there was a small gap between the wall of the stall and the stall door. And he looked through that gap at me, made eye contact with me, and he did like, why are you not answering me? He gave me that look which says, why are you not answering me? Which was extremely embarrassing. And I didn't have an answer to why I was not answering him, but I still didn't answer him anyway. Now, this story that I told you was hopefully you were cringing when I was telling the story about, what would you do if you were in a place where you didn't want to have a conversation, but somebody is forcing themselves on you? For example, if you're at a party and you don't feel like talking to some specific person, but they still catch you and start pouring you out some details, what do? You must have felt some sense of empathy with me that this guy is. I have been in the same situation where I don't want to be part of a conversation, but somebody's forcing me to be part of a conversation. So I was telling you an embarrassing story. I was in an embarrassing situation myself, and you were feeling that secondhand embarrassment with me. You were sort of imagining yourself in the same bathroom, maybe, or you're imagining yourself in a party where some really difficult person is pigeonholing you and talking to you, and you don't want to listen. So if that happened to you, I was basically using one of the triggers of laughter to amuse you and entertain you. That trigger is called embarrassment, where the embarrassing stories of your life become a source of amusement and they can become part of your content. And one of the cool things about telling embarrassing stories is that not only does it remove the cognitive load on you, like if you can get an audience to laugh at an embarrassing story of yours and genuinely laugh, that means that you have gone beyond letting that embarrassing story undermine you or defeat you or define you. You have used that embarrassing story to entertain the audience. It's out in the open. It's done. So you don't have that cognitive load on your head that should I be sharing this story or any of those things. The audience knows that this happened to you and you handled it, and that's the end of it. The second thing is that if you tell an embarrassing story, it lets the other people in the audience feel that if this guy can survive that incident, I can tell some story also. It's not a big deal for me, if for the embarrassing stories of my life, I've faced much smaller embarrassments than what this guy has faced. For example, my story about being stuck in a toilet when the boss was talking to you, it's a really embarrassing situation to be in. I'm sure you guys have had embarrassing situations as well, where maybe you wore your t-shirt inside out or something, or you went to work on you're supposed to dress up and or in ethnic wear one day, but you wore Western clothes to work. So those are small things, small embarrassments compared to what I told you. So I've given you that space, that I have set the bar really, really high for what embarrassing stories I have had to face. Now your embarrassing stories don't feel as embarrassing anymore. You feel like, yeah, this guy can tell that story, I can tell my small story as well. So that opens up the audience to you, because the audience feels that this guy is so comfortable talking about embarrassing things, so it must not be such a big deal to talk about my embarrassing stories as well. So that is another really nice way to create empathy with the audience and use that to bring the audience on your side. And the first outcome that every speaker wants to achieve is to have the audience on your side. You want the audience to feel, see, and understand things your way. And this becomes a really nice trick to do that. So let me stop and ask, does anybody have any embarrassing stories to share? Maybe from your school days or your early college days. Even now, if you have some new embarrassing stories to share, please feel free to share. I've already told you mine. Nobody has any embarrassing. Are you guys that nice, is it? You have no embarrassing stories to share?
Oh, no, I think we have, but we are not sure how to tell it as a joke.
It's not a joke. I mean, it's just and that's the thing about embarrassing stories. If you just tell it as it happened, like I didn't
Yeah.
joke, I didn't make it a joke. I literally told you what happened to me, and I didn't embellish it or make it. So if you have something, Shabana, please
Yeah.
go ahead. Don't have anything, that's fine too.
Yeah, I could remember in school time, it was quite embarrassing. Means not in that sense, but it's like, oh, we had a very tough a teacher, and it means he got angry. I don't even remember why he got angry, and he was just punishing everyone.
Mm.
So my turn came, and the moment he was like about to punish me, like, there were tears on my eyes. I was like, oh no, today you are gone. And then something happened to him, and he was like, okay, no, I should not punish you. You can go now. And the moment he said that, I started laughing. And it was so amazing because everyone is like, why not she's punished her? And I couldn't stop my laughter, even in front of the teacher. And then it it all became very funny and embarrassing as well because you
Can you
don't know.
imagine, like, at this stage of life, to be like crying in front of a bunch of strangers? I mean, they're not strangers, they're classmates, but still,
Yeah.
like that embarrassment of being so scared of the teacher that you cried. That would have been, if you tell the story in front of a school, like if you have addressing bunch of school students and you tell them the story that you cried in front of a teacher, they'll be like,
Mm.
this person is she's like us, she's just as human as us and as vulnerable to emotional incidents as us. So yeah, definitely embarrassment. I mean, this story is embarrassing, and it's a great way to create empathy as well. So embarrassment is another trigger. First one was what was the first one? I forgot. But the second one was where you use human emotions on non-human human things. Third was embarrassment. Then one thing that a lot of uh, TV shows and streaming shows use today is recognition, which is another laughter trigger, where you place on screen somebody who's recognizable as a caricature or as a character from a certain part of the country or a certain style of living. Like uh, back in the day, a drunk person in the movies was always portrayed a certain way, and it was very recognizable that a drunk person is going to behave a certain way, and you can you can instinctively recognize that. But that was, again, the drunk people in Bollywood at least were extreme caricatures, like people like Johnny Walker and Johnny Lever and all those people. They were extreme caricatures, which was like really, if you the minute you met a drunk person who didn't behave like that, after that, that illusion was broken, and you'd never be able to find Johnny Lever and Johnny Walker, Johnny Walker, I don't forget his name, but those two people funny anymore. But there are stories where, like the show Panchayat, if you see it on Amazon Prime, that shows very recognizable characters who are very, very ordinary people, but they are interesting because you can recognize their motives, their way of mannerisms of speaking, the kind of language they use, the kind of things they worry about on screen. So that's recognition itself becomes a trigger for the audience to empathize with you. Like, take an example, you're giving a talk and it's nearly lunchtime. Okay, it's like 11 12 15 12 15, and you have another 20 minutes to go. You don't want to stop early. You still have 20 minutes to go. If you recognize the fact that the audience is looking at the clock on the wall with impatience, and they're like, I wonder when this talk is going to get over so we can go have lunch. If you recognize that and mention it, that I know you guys want to have lunch, but here's another 20 minutes of my content that I want to share with you. That recognition of the fact that the audience wants to leave, but you're keeping them from getting to their lunch itself becomes a way for the audience to laugh and come back to you as your audience. So treat recognition as again, it's like embarrassment. You don't have to go all out and make something really funny. Just call out the fact call out and talk about the things that are actually happening in front of you. That's enough. What's another example of recognition? In streaming shows, nowadays there is always a character from Bihar who is who speaks in a certain way. So back in the day, we never used to have Bihari characters on TV shows. They used to be like, at the most they'd be like some caricature who goes in, this is Darwan or something, the security guard or something. But of late, Bihari characters and people from the heartland are becoming more and more visible on screen, and because of which our experience of those content, those TV shows and streaming shows, our experience of it becomes much richer, because not only do we recognize the character on screen, we also supply a lot of backstory to it. For example, when I grew up in Bihar, so I know when I see somebody on screen doing Bihari things, I can always explain to my wife a little bit more than what is obvious to you if you're not from Bihar. If you do see them doing something, there's usually some nuance to it that I can explain to my wife. Same with when she tells me of characters from the heartland of Maharashtra. So there'll be something that I would have missed completely, but she'd pick up on it and say, this is what it really means that when this person says this or does that. So that recognition is again a great way to make the audience feel visible, validated, make them feel that you understand them because you are talking to them in a way that they recognize. So recognition is another humor and laughter trigger. When I say laughter trigger, keep in mind that I'm not talking about laugh out loud, ha ha ha, funny. Just simple things which make the audience understand that you realize and respect their point of view, and you're presenting that point of view back to them. That is what I mean by entertaining and laughter and humor. So just be mindful of that minor distinction. So, Shavana, it's 8:45, and I don't know if we are expecting anyone else to join, but I think this is pretty much it. I wanted to talk about these triggers of laughter and what humor looks like from the inside as a stand-up comedian. Hopefully, this will be of value to the people in Maven.
Yeah, you shared very important things, like how we can bring humor, like by recognizing and the journaling. I think I never thought journaling to bring humor in life. So that's really good, and many other things also you shared. I think it's really great.
Journaling is one of those things that, and humor is one of those things people think, oh, it has to come from you, from within. It's not. It's just work. Just like any other thing that any other skill that you picked up, you can pick up humor. So that's one insight I want to leave the audience with.
Yeah, and I think I attended, some time ago, I attended a course on leadership, and even that said, like humor is so important. If you bring it to even some of your greatest challenge, just by repeating it in a certain way, it just dissolves it. So
Right.
I think you are happy, you can make anyone happy also.
Exactly.
So of course we are excited about your program as well and looking forward to it.
But
And I think, Rajvin, do you want to share?
I think you can mute Rajvin.
Yeah.
With I would like to. You just mentioned that Shabana. You just mentioned that we can be happy. We have to laugh. We have to laugh in when we are happy. We don't laugh because we are happy, but we are happy because we laugh. So Dr. Madan Katare has said that, and I am very happy with Mahaguruji, and I am very happy with the work I do. I mean, yesterday was my first year of uh, teacher, and I went to the National Cancer Society, and uh, this this cancer patient didn't this Parkinson's patient didn't know anything about humor, and when he came out of my class, he started laughing. So I think, as you said, laughter is the best medicine, and humor triggers laughter, and laughter humor can you can laugh at anything, and laughter is a system that will hopefully people will learn that laughter yoga is a system that for laughter wellness per se is a system. Laughter yoga wellness is a system that can combine humor and uh, well humor and well-being. So because when you don't laugh, you're like, a day without laughter is a day wasted. As a stand-up comedian, Sai, you would you would agree with me on this, because me and you have done shows. Me and you have done. I have my own podcast, and you have your own podcast. Funnily enough, yeah. So, and I hopefully people will understand the concept. Yeah.
Right.
So, humor and laughter itself is just an exercise,
True.
and humor and laughter yoga, like you say, is a social connection. It's a mind, body, and soul connection. You laugh and until your stomach pains, and then you cannot have for like my kids, we have verbal diarrhea after that. Yeah, you have diarrhea after that, and then you feel like you okay. You can laugh through challenges.
Mm.
Humor makes us yeah humor makes us laugh through challenges. We'll be talking about laughter and employability, and if you want to join this Thursday, we'll be talking about that. Thank you.
Thank you
Awesome.
so
Uh, and I think if everyone in this world can make themselves laugh, like we
Yeah,
will have a happy praise. We don't need to do anything.
yeah,
So we need to learn from Sai how to make us laugh more and more.
yeah. Sai and myself. I think Sai, we should do uh 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 uh, funnily enough about fun
Yes.
versus funny, and why laughter is important in our life. Then I
much.
could join you on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Sai, and thank you everyone for joining. It was really great to know these insights, and you know, that it give us more homework to do. So we will do it. Thank you.